everybody. Welcome to InPsight Radio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall too everywhere. How is everybody? Hi, guys. It is September 23rd, and I love this day, right? This is where the sunshine just sits right on top of the equator. So both day and night are exactly the same length, which I think is so cool. Now, from this point forward, every day up here in the Northern Hemisphere is going to get shorter. So, guys, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, we are going to be rolling into fall. Welcome to officially autumn, everybody. I love this time of year, you guys. I love the leaves changing and, the whole feel of it. And not a whole ton of fall has come in yet here in Montana. However, it'll get there. It'll get there. We've got some trees that are trying to change. They're trying. So I'm pretty excited as we start to lose our light. That's really actually what causes leaves to turn. Did you know that? I used to think when I was a kid that it was about it being cold outside, but that's not actually true. It's about the fact that it's losing light. So the longer we burrow in through September into October, October, September, October here is gorgeous whenever we get there for fall. But here we sit on the equinox today, equal light, equal dark. And I thought, what an amazing opportunity to talk about what's to come in the balance of light and dark in humans. We are the great balancing act, aren't we? We are the great pot of tempera paint. And one side of tempera paint has some black and one side of tempera paint has some white. And it's really quite something. And we mix them together and we become these giant conundrums. However, one of the things that I think is so incredible about all this is that while we are going through this huge process of what kind of person do I want to be? How am I going to act? What am I going to be like? We go through all these things, right? While we go through all of this, I am always incredibly fascinated by the fact that the world still manages to not burn down, you guys. And so I figured on the autumnal equinox, it was such a terrific time to have just this incredible discussion about where we're headed. I mean, if you think about it, last month there was a lot of indictments for former President Trump. And we really, we saw a little bit online with people being disgruntled and this and that and the other thing. But we really haven't seen a whole lot erupt in media yet regarding what's going to happen with any of President Trump's supporters. Now, I know a lot of supporters up here for President Trump in Montana. And the more this keeps happening, the more he keeps getting indicted, his diehard supporters up here just truly believe the guy is being railroaded, okay? However, as Trump starts falling into this trough, and see, we're talking light and dark today, so this is a really fun podcast. As Trump is falling into this trough of more and more legal difficulties, what you're going to see is the elbowing of all of these other people that want to come up and out-Trump Trump. Be the most negative, nasty people alive and throwing those elbows wide out there. And how can they get out there and really just show people that they're even more nasty and dogmatic and by God, I'm more sensible. And everybody's playing to this guy's base right now. Not everybody, but there's a lot of folks in the conservative side of politics that are really hitting this hard as we go further into 2023. So what we're going to be seeing coming up is, and this is what the podcast is about, is how do we balance the light and dark in what we've got coming up societally? Now, we haven't really seen yet, not for a long time, not since Trump first took office, we haven't really seen another big explosion of people deciding that they are incredibly unhappy, not since January 6th, and people started going to prison, have we seen a lot of uprising of American people who are unhappy with the election results or whatnot, okay? Now, what I think is so interesting about this is that it's phenomenal for me to live in a part of the country that truly believes that an individual like Donald Trump is completely innocent and is just being persecuted because some Democratic people don't want him elected. So much so that they would manipulate the entire legal system, including the FBI, to do the bidding of a Democratic Party. That's truly what many, 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 many people believe, you guys. And that, when I look into it psychically, that does not appear to be the case. Former President Donald Trump just appeared to break a bunch of laws, finally got caught, got away with it for years. Then he was too high profile. Then they had to make an example out of him because, you can't have people who are, in the office of the presidency breaking all those laws or whatnot. But now, because we live in these insulated bubbles and because we've taken our manifestation consciousness into some really weird areas, man, really weird areas, here we are, and we are plumb set up to basically have to choose a road to head down. Now, what does that mean? I'm talking about consciousness. I'm talking about kindness. I'm talking about there is not exactly half. It is under half of the country. When I look into this psychically, it's under half of the country. But a lot of people, gang, truly believe that our country has been taken over by fascists, except they call the fascists socialists, and Marxists. So it gets a little weird when you're looking at the socialist Marxist Democrat and you're thinking, those aren't even like the same thing, you guys, but get your political upheaval mindsets, at least in a modality that's accurate here. However, it doesn't matter. They could think that people were planting alien eggs on the side of the road. It doesn't matter. It's all way out there because we literally have lost the trust in our system. And this goes back for years and years, and it started with Nixon, yet this fine line that we walk between light and dark in humanity. It's walking that fine line. Why is it so hard? It's hard because not everything is black and white. And when we're talking about political fundraising, the left wants you to believe that the right is entirely the problem, and the right wants you to believe that the left is entirely the problem. And this is much easier to fundraise this way. You always have to have a bad guy, you guys, if you're fundraising. That's like fundraising 101, right? In the old world. So why am I bringing up politics and all this stuff? Honestly, politics in America are so out of touch on a federal level, so out of touch with what's going on the basic level of people's lives. And I think we can all safely say that this is true. By the time you get to the Washington, D.C. level, and when I look into it psychically, that gets all kinds of crazy. You're looking at people who are really, really being bought off. You're looking at people who are basically holding congressional office just to have really great health care and to make $200,000 a year. We're not always looking at civic servants. And we've got people who are so ill in our senior government. Dianne Feinstein, God bless her, she's been sick for a long time. She's really been struggling. And, we've got Mitch McConnell, who has really been struggling. And I've been telling you guys for a long time, you've been listening to me say that Mitch McConnell's health is really, really poor. And it has been for quite some time. The poor guy has fallen down. I believe that his head injuries, that's really causing some incredible hiccups for him as we go along. And so all of this that's going down for Mitch McConnell is par for the course for somebody getting older with health problems who's in the public eye. Most of the time, people kind of step out of the public eye by the time they start to have these types of health issues. And poor Dianne Feinstein, geez, God bless her, she keeps asking everybody what's going on. They'll be leaning over to her to say, okay, you're supposed to be voting on this, or you're supposed to be casting a vote there. And she's just trying to hang on. And it's just lunacy, because one of the reasons that this is all happening, the reason that I'm sure that Mitch McConnell hasn't just retired and stepped out, and I'm sure the reason Dianne Feinstein hasn't stepped out, is I'm looking and seeing that neither one of those people, even though they've loved their careers, I'm seeing today on our show that neither one of those people want to be there. They just don't want to be there. And the reason they're staying is because If Dianne Feinstein retires, apparently the Republicans will not allow the Democrats to put another Democrat on a committee. So the Dems would be down, I guess, one person. And McConnell is apparently not retiring, even after the second episode he had, because he doesn't want to open the floodgates to the really extremist people that are gunning for his job. And, I'm certainly, Mitch McConnell is such an interesting character. He's not somebody I'd necessarily agree with in terms of his politics. Yet it's very hard to watch both Dianne Feinstein and Mitch McConnell just deteriorate in public service because the political application of them leaving would mean some sort of weird disaster for the country on either end. And so, this is the kind of, we're talking autumnal equinox today. So guys, this again, it's not all about politics today. It's about balance. And how do we balance our light and our dark? And there are people who believe that the Dems are dark. There are people who believe that the Republicans are dark. There's a lot of belief systems going on here. Really, what this is about is deciding where we want to create our reality. Back if you think about Stonehenge, right? Back in the days of Stonehenge was fascinating because when we look at Stonehenge, we see a really intense structure with these stones. It was carefully designed to line up with the way that the sun moved back in the day. And, those huge, ginormous stones aren't even from that area, you guys. They're from an area that's way away from where Stonehenge actually exists, all right? Those stones, they call them sarsen stones. And there's these smaller stones in there that they call blue stones. And they basically were set up in the center of the site. The blue stones were about 2,500 BC. And they were exactly and precisely arranged to frame two events that occurred in the year. Literally framed, like a picture frame, okay? And this Stonehenge was, imagine these giant stones that you're positioning in order to capture the sunrise at the summer solstice and the sunset at the winter solstice. So here we are in the autumnal equinox. I like to say autumnal equinox, and we're kind of in the middle of all these things. We haven't quite hit our winter solstice. However, the movement of the earth and the geomagnetism on the earth has been a very important. It's been so important that we've apparently built gigantor structures to track the sun to see where we are in the year. And so on this equinox, we really just want to pay attention to, I think we do, to the energies that are on the planet. And I'm fascinated by how our ancient peoples understood these energies because if you think about what's going on in the world right now, you think about all this chaos that's going on, you think about all this stuff that's happening. Here we are, and we got the sun directly above the equator today. So we've got equal days, we got equal night, equal day. That actually electromagnetically affects the planet. The sun's pull on the earth, it's a gravitational issue, you guys. It's called the tides, right? So we know that the sun affects the tides. We also, our ancient people were very aware that as the sun moved around and counted down the seasons, that electromagnetic energy on Earth also affected people. It affected people. Guys, I know I say this all the time and you're probably so sick of it, but in the human body, there are two electromagnetic organs, the brain and the heart. And there is a little kind of a silvery filament of cells called the vagus nerve that attaches the whole enchilada. And we've now found in the heart the same type of cells as you find in the brain. So your heart, in a way, has its own brain. And now none of this is new science. We've known about this for a while. But let's think about why our ancient peoples tracked the sun so much. And let's think about the pull that the earth and the sun have on one another with its gravitational index. And let's think about how that affects people. We talk about full moons having a weird effect on people, and they do, because oftentimes the moon, when it's full, might be closer to the actual earth, which is going to put more of gravitational pull on the earth, which means all the electromagnetic options in the body are going to be tugged on, and that can make people act differently. So when we're thinking about what we're going to be doing as we go every day from this point forward, our nights are going to get shorter. They're going to get shorter. So we're going to start to lose our light. And as we go barreling in towards this really phenomenal time frame called I love winter solstice, the celebration of light, December 21st. I absolutely love the solstice celebration right before Christmas Eve. And as we're moving towards that, we are kind of getting smushed towards that solstice to work on all of the issues that we need to clear up before we hit 2024. And I talked about this last podcast. As a matter of fact, I talked about this at length if you were able to attend my September 16th live global forum channeling event. Man, that was so great, you guys. If you joined me, thank you so much. That was so awesome to connect with the whole entire world at one time. You heard in more detail about how this barreling towards winter solstice is really crushing down on our sense of being so that we will come forward and have our gifts and talents ready to go in 2024. Because 2024 is going to be, drum roll please, the year of renewal. Okay, so this year, 2023, was the year of rooting. We were supposed to stay home, figure out what we're doing. My wife and I are in the process of building a house out here in Montana. Root. Figure out where you want to root, how you want to root down. But renewal is 2024. So in order to renew something old has to die off. And, if you think about a plant sprouting out through the soil, that's renewing the structure or renewing the plant that's rooted down. And now it's starting to renew. It hits the sunlight. It throws its leaves out there. Now, the problem with renewal, the year of renewal, is that renewal. I was having a hard time trying to figure out how to frame up this next year. I'm like, is it the year of growth? No, it's not expansion. It's renewal. It's where the soil is claimed for something different. It's 100% renewal. So why it's important, when we think about walking this fine line between light and dark, and I'm using Stonehenge as an example because there's also stones that mark the autumn and the spring equinox as well. It was obviously very important to understand for our ancient cultures where the heck we were, not just in terms of farming, because, I'll tell you, it starts getting cold outside. You're realizing, I probably should pull up my crops. Here we go. But this was also about seasons for people. Especially we Northern Hemisphere folks, not everybody's the same, gang. If you've grown up in a cooler Northern Hemisphere where you have a very seasonal climate, biologically, Northern Europeans are encoded to have certain work habits and certain living habits basically according to the seasons. That's the way that nature works. So I used to see this actually come to play. I'd see it come to play in my own music work life. We'd tour, we'd be out in the summer with my old band Pope Jane, and we'd be touring and having the best time ever. And then we would turn around and the fall would start coming in, and the fall was the time frame to bring it in and start recording. You always recorded in the fall. And then around November, December, you're doing big media releases. Back in the day, it was CDs. So you absolutely created this thing and you gifted it out to the world around that holiday time. And then you get through and spring starts coming up, and then you start rehearsals again for spring and you start playing out again. And then boom, you're out into a new phase that you're promoting the album that came out during the harvest time. You were harvesting your music and putting it down on a CD, in September, October, and then getting it out there for retail consumption or for sharing during the holiday period. I mean, we as human beings are incredibly seasonal. Especially those of us in a northern climate. So when we're talking about walking the fine line between light and dark, that's just the human condition, right? Yet for this year, this incredible year of renewal, it's going to be very important because we've already rooted down where our crops are going to be. Okay. So if we look at, I'm going to just use a really low hanging fruit piece here. I'm going to use, say, politics, and then we've got very polarizing characters like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene. For the left, those are polarizing characters. For the right, Nancy Pelosi and AOC are very polarizing characters. So you look at all the polarizing characters, and what we see is that, let's just take Marjorie Taylor Greene, okay? If she had to do a hard about face right now on everything, on all of the policies that she's laid out and said were important to her, in the year of renewal, it will blow up in her face. She has rooted down what she believes. She's rooted down her identity. She's rooted it all into the ground. And now this is the time where she's going to have to bring up a crop based on that. So we talk about walking the fine line between light and dark. There's a lot of people who believe what Marjorie Taylor Greene is doing in the House of Representatives is saving democracy and saving the United States. Same with AOC. If AOC decided that she was going to do an about face on her whole Green New Deal platform and all of a sudden try to become somebody she wasn't, that's not going to set with her people who support her at all. That is absolutely not going to set there. So, it's one of these things where we've rooted into who we are and what we are. And so the fine line on this equinox is so interesting to talk about because the energies, I can feel the energies today, are trying to balance it out. We're going to go into a period of losing our physical light, yet a period where it's going to be very, very important to cultivate our emotional and spiritual light. So again, if we went back to our ancient peoples before the church came in and erased all of our indigenous ways of working with our planet, what we'd see is that a lot of the, quote, I'm not going to call it earth worship because I don't believe that our ancient peoples were worshiping the earth. It's more accurate, I believe, to say that they were really being mindful of the fact that they shared this earth. The earth was a majestic, mystical thing. We hadn't separated ourselves from the earth yet. So to be in this incredible space of flowing with the planet meant that we also were in flow with purpose, in flow with our seasons, in flow everything. The planet was bigger than us, and we actually believed that back then. Now we believe that we aren't even attached to climate. We believe that nothing we're doing actually affects anything. So the balance has been deeply lost. And coming into the year of renewal, it's going to be important that we have planted good crops coming up into that, and technically we're in fall right now. As we come into October, November, really start pushing into basically winter or early winter, we're going to start seeing less and less gray area for people. And it's interesting if you think about it, because as we go into the dark period of lacking light, all right, we're going to be losing less gray area. So it's going to be pretty black and white the way that things are going to go. And I've been talking about this for a while, about the fact that our financial system in 2023 was not going to be that sexy, and it really hasn't been. I mean, here we are all the way in the 23rd of September, and this is just not a sexy time frame. It's just not sexy. Financially or otherwise. There have been a lot of great things that have been going on for people. a lot of transitional things. But you can start to feel the earth start to tuck itself in, right? It's just part of the natural course of things. So when we get into the year of renewal, it's very important that the crops that we've rooted down into, even though we're going to go into a bit of a stasis period with our winter, emotionally and spiritually, we're going to come alive, guys. That's one of the reasons I so love the Festival of Lights on December 21st. I love the solstice ceremony because from that day forward, we begin to beckon light into ourselves. And it's not surprising that the Catholic Church put Christmas, the birth of Christ, just a few days after, the Son of God, get it, S-U-N, S-O-N, the Son of God comes along right after winter solstice. And we begin to bring, he is the light of the world. So, I get it. You guys they thought the ancients were worshiping the earth and worshiping light. And really, it was just a way to remind us that we were in communion with this portion of God or portion of being that is so much bigger than us, right? So as we go into this year of renewal, we can start to work on some aspects of self to really make sure that everything that we worked on rooting in 2023 is in its right place before we take off into this next phase of being. And this is important for a couple of reasons, you guys. It really is important for a couple of reasons. And some of those reasons being that fine line between light and dark is going to exist in all of us. And dark is not bad within us. It's part of our experience. I mean, yes, it can be very bad if we lean into some really messed up behaviors with the dark. But it's really truly there to be a teacher, as is light. Our shadow periods are the periods where we go inward in the winters and begin to look at ourselves and say, man, what did I like about my rooting process in 2023? What did I not like about it? So again, big, heavy theme in this time frame about coming out of judgment of the self. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to be the best person we can be. We should. However, don't turn into a sociopathic serial killer just to explore your dark. That's probably not the most productive way to do that. However, in this autumn time frame, I can feel the thinness of the ethers. And as we move along into October through the rest of September, those ethers are just going to get thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner. And we want to make sure that the crop that we are going to bring up in 2024 represents everything that we've cultivated to this point. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things we do is we really focus on the fact that we aren't stagnant creatures. We evolve. And we kind of watch the news because the news is a little negative because that's how our media companies make money, is to put on the tragedy, put the tragedy on. That's always healthy and fun. But in all seriousness, if we track the news, gang, we're going to see patterns of people just not wanting to read about the negative garbage anymore. People just aren't going to want to. And this is going to get tough because as I look into October, we've got some more Old West stuff coming forward. We've got some sociological unrest. We've got some world unrest. We've got some things coming forward that are going to be a little more difficult to deal with. However, if we understand our roots that we've put down in all of 2023, and we understand the nature of what we are trying to bring forward in the year of renewal or, renewing a whole system, then even through the rougher times, the darker times within us, we're going to understand our own roadmap. Okay? So why is this so important? Because aren't we always trying to figure out our light and dark? This is hardly an epiphany here. But when I talk to these angels, gang, and I look at the absolute dissolution of the old world that's coming up in 2024, and that's an election year, so that's going to get really weird. Think about it a minute. When we're birthing new systems, it's renewal, but it's really a birthing year. You could think about it the year of birth. But that just sounds a little much. So we're renewing all of the systems. We're not birthing a brand new system in, we're renewing them. And one of those big systems that we're going to be renewing is money. I know I keep saying this like a broken record. However, I just was scrolling through the news feeds this morning, looking at how at the end of September of this year, they're saying, oh, buying is so strong and all these, the economy is so strong. Well, again, we're at record credit card use, gang. So I don't think we're that strong. I think the party's going to run out here pretty soon. And when that happens, we're going to be beset with the fact that we are going to need a different system, for money. I mean, yes, the United States, our dollar is not going to collapse or anything like that. But man, October, November are just looking like really lousy financial portions at the end of 2023. Now, none of this is a big mystery. I've been talking about this since January of this year of 2023. Yet we're in that time frame where keeping the balance in the self is going to be really, really important. And this is the time frame for all you crypto collectors out there. This is a time frame where the crypto is going to start climbing up as the dollar starts to plummet. Now, usually these two attributes have been kind of tied together. However, we're going to need a reason. We're going to need a reason to stay a superpower. That's right. So it looks like we're going to be leaning into some of this crypto coming in. And that's really not coming in till, I want to say, maybe the end of October, it looks like, of 2024, into November, December. Really, that comes in 2024. So don't worry if you've got, money in IRAs and whatnot. The stock market's looking pretty limpy, you guys. It's going to get limpier and limpier, it looks like, all the way through out to the end of the year. And I think in part, some of that has got to do with some just violence and local violence in the country. I think probably world violence. I mean, we've got this war going in Ukraine. And there's just this feeling globally coming up of things just crackling and the whole globe being tired of supporting the consciousness in Ukraine, not supporting the consciousness in Ukraine, but supporting this war. The world is supporting a war right now, and everybody can feel what's going on in Ukraine, and everybody can feel what's going on the Russian end, and Russia's just flat going broke on this whole war. So I feel that eking out through the ethers and affecting world climates, just creating an unrest and some crispiness. And I'm not talking World War III, but just some real serious crispiness that's brewing around the planet. So when you're looking at all of this, you guys, balance. How do we deal with the fear inside of ourselves as we come on to some of these times, which temporarily may seem a little abrupt? And I'm looking at people as we go through and we go into more of the holiday times. I'm looking at people, the Trump camp looks really quiet, and if you're looking at the news, Donald Trump hasn't been doing much since he's been indicted 45 million times. And so he's kind of laying low. A lot of his supporters are laying low. There are some of his governmental supporters, which are doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on all of this. However, we have yet to see the unrest from people who are disappointed about what happened to a president that they consider to be just like them. And you have to remember, folks, I know there's a lot of folks who listen to this podcast who are not fans of Donald John Trump. That's fine. Yet there are a lot of people who are huge fans and think that this man represents American business and American pride and American democracy. And they look at what's going on with him and they think the whole thing is falling down a crack of socialist Marxist weirdness that doesn't make any sense. So even though that's not my lens, because I have the psychic lens of looking and seeing all the parts that are moving here, we're going to have a lot of people who believe that to be the truth. And so as we get closer, to into 2024, right after we get over that 2024 bridge and going into some holiday seasons, we're going to see some explosions, hopefully not literally, but I certainly do see that sociologically in the United States, with people feeling pinched for money for the holidays because now we've maxed all our credit cards out, pretending that we're not in a recession because that's healthy. That's healthy. And then we're going to go on and try to buy holiday gifts for everybody. and open up new credit cards and continue to just tank into debt. I'm looking at interest rates look like they're going to kind of keep going up. They're not going to skyrocket, but they're going to keep going up. And I think they're going to start coming down in 2024. You probably don't need to be a psychic to know that. You could probably read the newspaper for that. But I'm looking ahead here. And when this happens, the price of homes is going to drop a little bit. But the problem is we've got these investment groups that are going around and just snapping up homes. So the minute it becomes easier to buy, these investment groups are going in and just sight unseen, just buying homes left and right and turning them into rentals. So I would say the amount of homes that are available is still pretty tight. Still pretty tight. So when we're talking about the year of renewal, this is also renewing how we choose to live. How do we choose to live? Our Gen Zs, our Gen Ys, our millennials, and quite a lot of Gen X and quite a lot of the baby boomer generation as well, are stepping off of consumptive lifestyles. And being a Gen Xer myself, I can tell you, we were raised in the wild and excessive 80s, and we were literally trained, as consumers, that you needed to have 7 pairs of shoes all in a different color and 7 pairs of pants all in a different color. Well, our younger generations, thank goodness, are looking at the world they're living in, and they're looking at the practices of making all of these cheap clothes. My daughter's one of them. My daughter is an incredible steward of fashion. She is a fashion design and merchandising major at a beautiful college here in the United States, and she is loving the fact that she wants to bring a sustainable clothing company forward. We're seeing clothing made out of seaweed instead of other textiles. We're seeing younger generations come in and say, how can we make this sustainable? So sustainability is going to be a really, really big clumping theme coming up in our Striking for Balance, because today's Balance Day, right on the line between light and dark here. So we're going to be trying our darndest to strike a balance between what is consumptive and what is regenerative. And again, we're going to see a lot of this with things like food growth as well. So as we go along and we withhold money, let's do an overview. Okay, year of renewal, coming out of the year of rooting. We've rooted down. Everybody's rooting where they think they need to kind of take their little shovel and dig into the dirt and get their little bums, squish it all in there and kind of push the dirt around the front of them. And I know I'm describing a foxhole, it sounds like, but I'm really actually trying to describe a really nice snuggly den. A nice fall and winter den, not a foxhole. But some people are going to treat it like foxhole. So when we snuggle down in there, we're going to be looking for ways to maximize our space. So I was talking about housing. This angel is showing me that housing, though the housing prices are going to come down, we are not going to have much of an inventory because the inventory is still getting snapped up by these weird consumptive investment groups. So that tends to drive house prices back up, even though the prices or the interest rates, are coming down. So when we're going into the year of renewal, we're really being asked, how do you want to live your life? And how do you want to benefit your community? And one of the things that came through in my global channeling last weekend was that, as a globe, we're going to have to start really depending on one another. Period. And we should have been doing this 40 years ago, and the European nations are much better about doing this because they live in such close proximity with one another than we in the United States are. We still live a pretty darn entitled existence over here, so much so that representatives in the House and in the Senate can separate themselves on a federal level from what is really going on back home. Now, not everybody does that, but there are a lot of folks who are up there to grandstand. They're up there to try out a consciousness of extremism to see where it gets us. So it's going to look a little bit like there is some headway being made by, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of by the crazy movement for a while, the real extreme. And it's actually on the right. The left is kind of chilling out. And I'm seeing as I look ahead, everything's kind of in third gear here, just rolling into 2024's election cycle. But man, there's a lot of fringe on the right that is going to keep pushing this fringe ideology. The problem is, those folks never got the war they wanted. They wanted a war with the left. They wanted all these extreme lefties who are just as extreme as them to go to war with them. But that's not really how the left works. The left loves to complain and boycott and do all these things. But when it comes to picking up a bunch of guns and storming a Capitol, on the left, it's not so much. It's more like, you got a drum? I need a circle. Let's just sit down and really piece this out, man. Kumbaya. And I don't know. It's a different way of dealing with unrest. So what I'm seeing here is that 2023, in its year of renewal, there are going to be those who renew their commitment, quite honestly, to fear and to anger and to rage. And we're going to see a bit of a turnaround. And, everybody thinks Donald Trump is going to be calling his armies together. I am not seeing Trump calling his army. I am seeing other wannabe Trumps, like the Matt Gaetzes and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and these folks who are calling out these giant armies to come forward and do extreme things. You guys, Donald Trump is just sitting there in his 70s going, what the F and hell happened to my empire? Since when are these the rules? He's having an old rich white guy meltdown right now. And he's going to continue. He's going to continue to get sanctioned and continue to have restriction in how he's allowed to do business and whatnot. I'm telling you guys, watch this guy for a flight risk. He's going to get sick of this after a while. But right now, he's got to stick around and run for president so he can get as much money as he can so he can take off to the moon or wherever he's headed. He's going somewhere. So I think that probably our Secret Service and everybody's probably aware of this, but, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? So as we go into the year of renewal and on this day where we're balancing the light and dark inside of ourselves, make sure that you really give yourself an opportunity to understand where your compassion lies for others. Because in renewing, the year of renewal, we need to renew our covenants with ourselves as well. And if we're somebody that believes in, peace, love, and harmony in the American way, then we need to renew those covenants to be peaceful with ourselves and with others, and to go into harmony with ourselves and with others. And if we're whatever your belief system is, renewing your vows to that system and also braiding in with it the knowledge that we are all working through a pretty intense time frame here that's going to get more intense. We've got world disasters coming in, you guys. It's just our climate, we've got floods. We've got all kinds of stuff that's already occurred. We've got some really rough times to traverse if we are sitting in different camps. And the problem, I shouldn't say problem, this angel's correcting me. The challenge with this kind of universal energy on the planet Earth is that some people see this energy as a call to war, and others see it as a call to unity. So that's quite a difference in perception, and that's why I'm talking about this on an equinox. One person's call to unity is another person's call to war. So we're going to be seeing equal parts of this warring mentality just flooding out into the world, here in the United States, abroad, all over the place, as well as this dramatic call to unity. And especially those who've really gotten into the political infighting, neighbors, family members. I'm looking at a lot of people wanting to step off of that because it's just not sustainable. It's not functional. And again, the year of renewal, renewing your vows to yourself and to others. And there will be people who go to renew those vows and they can't. So they leave that situation. They leave that ideology. There's a lot of folks out there on both sides of what we call the political spectrum in the United States right now who are really sick and tired of the political system trying to frighten everybody to death just so it can fundraise, right? People are really tired of the media banging the gong of the worst case scenario and using these really obvious buzz phrases to try to get people to click on content. People are over it, you guys. And even more than that, people throughout the world, like I said, we've hit an etheric boiling point with this horrible war that's been going on, Putin's war, just haranguing Ukraine. We have hit a boiling point where we are in a non-sustainable section of people being very frightened about what's going on with our climate, our earth. I mean, the whole thing is getting a little Old West here. So just be mindful of where your shadows reside going into the year of renewal. Because, boy, that just sounds like renew. It's going to be great. Yay. It will on some aspects, but to make a new money system, is going to involve some fear for some people. And the boiling point we're at is spiritual. So what can we do about all this? We can't change the world tomorrow. We can't stop people from going out and buying arsenals and trying to protect a former president that they believe is innocent. We can't stop people from doing that. What we can do is focus on the etheric structure, on our ethers, on the quantum field, on the quantum level. And we can try to offset this boiling pot that's happening on the earth. And like I said, more of this is really going to play out through October, November. However, we're going to feel this boiling point starting to hit a critical level. And what can we do in that case? Well, one of the things we can do, gang, is to become very at peace in our own environment, okay? And I know that's hard. If you've got an environment that's not peaceful, that's a real tough one. But find even 5 or 10 minutes of your day where you can dedicate your time towards peace. You want to dedicate a section of your life towards peace. This is so important. It's so important to be able to get out there and, I don't want to say meditate, but even if you're listening to one of your favorite songs that brings your spirits up, okay? When our brain goes into a happy brainwave space, and I'm going to keep the science of this very, very simple. Those happy brainwaves, because again, electromagnetic organs, right? And we're talking about the autumnal equinox. Boy, I'm going to miss today. Autumnal. Just roll that around in your mouth a minute. Autumnal equinox. As we go through and we listen to this music and we allow our brains to feel peace and to feel happiness, that electromagnetic organ called the brain radiates out and it touches it touches the ethers. It affects the quantum field. And imagine just bringing out little Dixie cups to the side of a campfire. Now, one little Dixie cup probably isn't going to do a whole lot, 100 million Dixie cups are going to put that fire out and cause a small flood in a campground. So all you need is your little Dixie cup of peace that you put into the etheric structure. And it's not hard. You can sit quietly. You can sit with pictures that make you happy. You can put music on that makes you happy. In other words, create a pocket of peace for yourself, because that peace will resonate out into the ethers, into our quantum field, and will seek other peaceful pockets. Now, even in places where there are some really hardcore violence, and like if we look at Ukraine, if we look at Russia, sitting with that terrible just outcome that's happening over there. And that war, you guys, is so past its mark. It is so past its mark. It's non-sustainable. And the fact that the whole world is feeding Ukraine resources, food, weapons, And there are a few folks feeding Russia also. So it's kind of a funny little world war, but not exactly a world war kind of situation. However, we can still get peaceful in our own space. Light some candles, sit by some water, sit in some water, and send peace out to the ethers. And how do you do that? You can imagine peace. You can imagine your forehead and your chest being covered in shutter doors, right? And those shutter doors are pushed wide, wide open so that all of this love and this incredible provision can flood into everywhere and just be incredible in terms of soaking our ethers with love. And again, one Dixie cup is not going to put out the whole campfire. 100 million Dixie cups is going to flood the whole campground. This is what we have to remember, gang. This is why it's important to monitor the light and dark inside of you. What you think matters. What you think doesn't just stay inside of your head. What you think connects up to the actual electromagnetic and physical etheric structure that the whole planet is steeping in like a tea bag. So if you're constantly thinking negative, well, not only will that just bring you negative results because, we do live in a bit of a cause and effect environment. However, if you constantly are steeping in the tea bag of negativity, then you are going to be pouring that negativity into the ether structure. I mean, look at this. We've got all this suffering in Ukraine and in Russia. We've got suffering in other parts of the world we don't even talk about. My goodness, the Middle East has been fighting with itself for tens of thousands of years over there. And I can feel that there's places in, I want to call them our Asian countries that are going to be getting spicy. The Middle East is going to be getting spicy. Areas that are prone to spiciness are going to be getting spicy, you guys. So if we can't, and a lot of what's feeding this is the unrest in people's homes that are getting bombed by Russia in Ukraine. A lot of what is feeding this is the unrest politically over here in the United States and we've got such an entitled culture over here. And I realize we have a lot of people who are not entitled financially, emotionally, socially, spiritually. I get that. But overall, the United States as a country is a very wealthy country, even though the individuals here don't oftentimes get a chance to take advantage of everything that this country has to offer. So, I want to blame the government for that, right? We want to blame the government. But honestly, look at your local governments. Look at your local legislators. Look at your local school boards. Look at your city councils. Those are the folks that are putting into the ethers the laws that are affecting you. And on the books, not just the ethers. So if you want to start, you're like, I don't know how to affect world change. I don't even know. I don't think I can find one thing to be positive about in this crazy ass world. Yes, you can. And it's not about being positive. It's about ruminating on something that gives you peace. Maybe you think about your favorite grandparent when you were 7 years old. Just allow that chest to open up. Allow that heart chakra to open up. Imagine those big blast doors just opening up in your chest to be able to allow this flood of really incredible, chewy peace. Maybe the last time you felt peace, you were 5 years old and you had a bunny rabbit and you were snuggling it and you liked the smell of the little cedar shavings on its head or something, just remember what gives you peace and just sit with that with an element that belongs to the earth. Sit with the candle, fire element. Sit in a bathtub of water. Sit with your feet in some water if you don't have a bathtub. Get an old boiling pot and just stick your feet in some water. Connect with the elements of the earth and allow this peace to hit the etheric structure. And that is going to make such an incredible difference in your personal balance, because we're talking about balance on our autumnal equinox. We're talking about balance today. So this is going to help you with your own balance, but it's also going to affect literally on a microcosmic, on an atomic level, on a quantum level, it's going to affect our ethers. This is going to need to be something we all do, not just for yourself, but for the world. Because talking about Stonehenge again, our ancient people, back to Stonehenge, this angel takes me. Here we go. Our ancient peoples understood our connection to the seasons, to the earth, to each other. They understood that we were not separate from this planet and this electromagnetic system in which we reside. And it was really, I want to say, the Victorian era with all of the science. And I'm a huge science head, you guys. I love science. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying we kind of went in a weird direction because we got so superstitious. And a lot of the superstition that drove forward, gang, had to do with the church, had to do with organized religion, had to do with the spread of Christianity. And all of a sudden we had to demonize other things in order to get butts into the seats, in order to give people to give us money. We had to scare them. We had to scare them. Is this sounding familiar yet? Just like we have to scare them if we're the DNC or the RNC and we're sending out our fundraising letters. Oh, the Democrats are going to eat your face. Oh, the Republicans are going to eat your face. It used to be, oh, the devil's going to eat your face. Give us all your money. You know, I mean, this is literally the same fear that's been reproducing itself through this planet over and over again. It has been the same fear. And cutting people off, or trying to, from the indigenous power that we have, that is our spiritual birthright, that however you want to look at God, you know, God didn't come down and make the church structure. That was human beings. And then the church structure became political. Then we needed to scare people to make them give us money and to think they're just maggots underneath the boots of an angry God. And now we scare people in America to make them, the folks on the right, we don't want them to be maggots under the boots of the left, and saying we don't want the lefties to be maggots under boots of the right. I mean, it's the same script, you guys. Are you seeing this? This is why I'm saying get a control of your shadow. You know, so many people are saying, oh, the world's never been in a pickle like this before. We've never been in a place this bad before. Oh, no, we have. We have societally. Let's talk about World War II. We definitely have been. Talk to the people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki about how bad that day was for them, okay? We definitely have had horrendous moments. Why don't we talk to the people in Pompeii about that day? That probably sucked for everybody as they were buried alive in hot ash. So, you know, yes, horrible things happen. And the one thing we do have that's unique about this time frame is that we have more people on the planet than we've ever had. And that is really what separates this time frame from other time frames. We've not had the medical care that we have now. We've not had the science that we've had now. We're keeping people alive for a long time. Plus, we're dumping on top of it a lot of anxiety that's hitting in the ethers. We're dumping a lot of financial inequality across the whole globe. We are dumping a lot of climate issues, which in part are, of course, part of our planet's transition. But we also 1,000% have affected the climate, in addition to the planetary cycles that are going along. I mean, we're not separate from this planet. And if the planet has to get our attention by, you know, erupting some volcanoes and flooding out some towns and breaking some dams and doing some things that are, you know, really intense, it's going to get our attention to try to teach us that we are not separate. We are not the separate structures observing nature. We do not have a mastery over nature. We are subject to nature. So on this equinox day, it's so important to remember the balance of where we're at. And let part of this balance be a grace for others that may not hold your worldview. And I always say, you guys, because sometimes I get some kind of pointy mail after I say stuff like this, with people saying, are you telling me it's right to rape children? I don't believe that. No, of course, I am not telling you it's right to rape children. And creepy folks would go there, but they do. So I'm saying that if we're going to strike balance, and that's what this angel is talking about, We've got to understand where our triggers are for our own light and our own dark. And we've got to understand that we do have an effect on our environment. I mean, think about it. Have you ever gone to work and one of your coworkers is just in a sour freaking mood? And they're just pouting around and slamming cabinets and stomping around and glaring at everybody because they just cannot handle their discontent. And energetically, they might as well have eaten 5,000 rancid burritos and wandered around without any trousers on, just letting it rip all day. I mean, it is just noxious. Spiritually, it is just toxic. Toxic. What we put out into the ethers energetically. That's why I'm talking about bringing in the balance of light and joy on this equinox. Bringing in the balance of light, levity, peace. Again, sitting with an element. You know, God made everything. God, with this, the earth itself, the angels call it the Great Mother, which is an extension from the angelic realm of God, the Great Mother, the extension of God. All living things, an extension of that, the all, or the one that is all. So there's a lot going on right now. And people are going to be receiving little prompts of peace all over the place. And those prompts of peace are going to come in the weirdest packages. And they'll come in weird packages to get your attention. I have a lot of clients right now that consider themselves atheists. They do not consider themselves religious at all, who have been struggling with the fact that they keep feeling like they're being visited by Christ energy, by Jesus energy. And that's completely antithetical to what these folks believe. And I'm not talking the whitey-tighty Jesus who wanders around looking like somebody's, hippie blonde uncle from Sussex. I'm not talking about that Jesus. I'm talking about the Christed energy that has come through many teachers, many spiritual teachers. This energy has come through. Yet people will recognize it in the United States as a Christed energy. They'll recognize it as a Jesus energy because that's the closest thing they can equivocate it to. And I'm, not saying you have to turn yourself into a Christian. I'm just saying that the peace energy is going to find us no matter where we're at. And if it has to pull a really weird Halloween costume out of our psyche to say, well, maybe you'll recognize this. Maybe it tries on a Buddha costume for some folks. Maybe it puts a Kali costume on for some folks. Maybe it's the Christed Jesus for other people. But be open to the universe reaching out to your heart. No matter how it comes to you. No matter how it comes to you. Be open to being taught the lessons of compassion and connection with others who may not share your belief system. Be open to some weird thing happening. I'm being drawn, as a former pastor, of course, I have much more, reference for the Christian version of the Bible than other spiritual books, which I think all have equal weight and equal relevance. And I think about, there was this dude, Saul, and, he went around giving a hard time to Christians for a while until God said, hey, stop, and kind of got his full attention by knocking him off a donkey and blinding him for a second and then calling him Paul. And Saul was Jewish and really wasn't down with the whole crazy, weird Christian movement thing. So I'm not saying that you have to convert from Judaism to Christianity. I'm saying it could have been Buddha. It could have been Buddha that knocked Saul off that horse and said, you know what? You are going to learn others, to love others as yourself, and you're going to learn there is no self. Could have been Buddha. And I'm sure in the Hindi books, there is probably a lot of stories about people having their attentions be drawn to spiritual humility in a way they wouldn't normally figure it out, doing away with all this hypocrisy and this, just all the labels we stick on everybody now. Oh my God. You're a blue person, you're a red person, you're a Christian person, you're an atheist person. How about you're a person? And you are sharing a planet with billions of other people. And the power that is love is desperately trying to cut through here and reach out to all of us and teach us the power of the Dixie cup. One Dixie cup on the campfire isn't going to do anything. 8 billion Dixie cups of water on the campfire creates an ocean, which changes the spin of the planet, which changes the electromagnetic source that our brains and hearts clock onto every day. We unify as a species. I don't mean unify of heart or thought. I just mean understanding. We unify in understanding of how we work as a collective. And there's not going to be one entity out there that can ever scare you into giving away your money again. Because we've created the ocean that has literally created the tide. So on this equinox today, just take a survey of your valid light and your valid dark and understand who you are going into this very pivotal time frame as we roll into October's thin ethers. We've got so much to offer one another. If we just come out of denial that we affect everything in our proximity and even in dimensions we don't even see. I have faith in our ability to come together. I have faith in your ability to find your Dixie cup of love. I have faith in your ability to pour it into the quantum field. And I look forward to feeling that. Until next podcast.